Normally, I start off my reviews with a bit of information about how I got to play this game. But honestly, the story how I got to this one is just very simple. I was in the middle of my review of Sword Art Online Last Recollection when I got a message from a mate, basically saying, "Do you want some anime waifus in a card game?" And well, as a waifu addict, I jumped on it right away and got here to Yohane the Parhelion Numazu in the Mirage. Now, I am not the best at card games or deck building games in general, but as someone that loves to explore and try out different things, card games and especially deck builders are always very interesting to me. And this time it was in an anime skin, so in other words, this game should be right up my alley. But is it? Well, that is what we're going to find out. Yohane the Parhelion Numazu in the Mirage follows a young fortune teller named Yohane who lives in a small seaside town. Her wish is to help the people of the town via fortune telling. However, that business is not as easy as she expected. After a wrongly predicted fortune for a merchant, she and her companion helps them out as a sort of apology. And as a thank you from the merchant, she receives a mirror. However, it turns out that the gifted mirror is not an ordinary mirror. After a while, friends of Yohane start to fall ill, and trying to help her friends via fortune telling activated the mirror and drags Yohane into it. She finds herself now stuck in a different world, where the town she lives in and the people she knows act differently, mirrored. Trying to find a way to escape this mirror dimension, she has to fight enemies never seen before and unravel the mysterious connection between the mirror, the dimension and the illnesses that befall her friends. A very direct story premise that's about doing the right thing and friendship. Later, it even touches a more serious topic and sets up that tone, but loses it almost instantly by the very over-the-top style the entire story is presented. Characters are very expressive during dialogue and in their animations, which, to be fair, adds a certain charm that is not uncommon in anime, but this charm heavily impacts your entire experience with the game, as the cutesy, over-the-top acting and talking anime girls is the aspect that carries this game's entire story. As we follow Yohane on her adventure, the story does not really dive in deeper in terms of what it tries to tell. It's very predictable as well, and there's no world building or in-depth characters to fall back on. Even the main character herself, Yohane, who is in the spotlight the entire time, barely gets developed or given much depth. Now, there is room to tell a more in-depth story and expressing its message a lot better. However, if it was a requirement to do so or just a missed opportunity is what I'm very much on the fence about. Personally, I like the charm and visual presentation of the game. In my opinion, it more or less saved the game, as if those aspects weren't there, the lackluster story would have done much more damage to my experience. It's a shame though, as when I look at the material they had to work with, be that the previous game, its own anime, or the connection to the Love Live universe, it seems like they left a huge, decent story opportunity on the table. Yet you can ask, do they need to take advantage of this story opportunity when it's clear from the start that the game values and focuses more on its gameplay? The gameplay offered here is a roguelite deck builder that took heavy inspiration from Slay the Spire. At the start of each adventure, you are given a basic deck with 1 or 2 unique cards and then sent on adventure into the mirror world. Every adventure is divided in a couple of stages, each with their own randomly generated paths filled with events, loot, encounters and boss battles. As you progress, you find cards and charms which you have to use to create and edit your deck further. You have to make a lot of choices, but not all of them are good for you. However, if everything goes right, you slowly build up the best possible deck, strong enough to beat the final boss of the adventure. Once that is done, you go back to the beginning and the whole adventure starts over again. However, as the starting stats and deck can be slightly changed at the start, and cards, encounters and events in the levels themselves are randomly generated, each adventure is different from one another. I enjoy card games from time to time, but it's the explore element that comes with these kind of games that pulls me in, and the random/roguelite element here is definitely what I enjoyed the most. It's a storm of many possibilities that is explored at random, and each choice you make ripples through into your entire adventure. Understanding what impact your choices can have, be that early or late game, is something you need to learn, as that will determine success or failure. And you learn this by going on multiple adventures. Same goes for tactics of certain enemies, best path to pick to travel across stages, what cards might be in the loot pool in each run, and when to pick a card, or more importantly, when you don't want to add a new card. Because while the realm of possibilities are right in front of you, I would recommend you don't let your enthusiasm to explore get the better of you like it did with me. At first, I picked up almost every new card I could find, constantly getting new cards and unlock combos I could start to work with. But too many cards completely choked my deck, so next time I was very careful when choosing to add new cards. But then I was too careful on that end, resulting in my deck being very weak and loose before my adventure even started. It's again that ripple effect and that fine line you need to find between many different aspects like exploring, tactic and luck that made this game so much fun to explore. Therefore, I will say the early game felt more difficult, as at the start you're still feeling the waters a lot, even in later playthroughs. You don't know what direction you want to go and what kind of deck you will be making. It feels like struggling to push a ball up the hill. But once you are over it and the ball starts to roll, it usually results in a very satisfying situation, where your deck gives you full control in whatever you want to do or go with. On top of your normal deck, you also have charms, which are huge game changers, as they can not only boost you with buffs or debuffs, but also affect cards individually, making finding new charms usually a very nice moment in each playthrough. However, that ripple effect can also have a negative effect on your situation. Sometimes you interact with an event and gamble on gaining something out of it, only to lose a decent chunk of HP or a card you really like. And that loss of that card or HP might mean the next challenge will be more difficult for you, or you have to even sacrifice upgrading a card for healing. Though, in my time with the game, most of the ripple effect felt fair, and rarely it felt like bad RNG sealed my fate. But still, things could go bad. That is part of this kind of game, and that is one of the many things to learn and understand when you play this game. Thankfully, the game is surprisingly easy to learn and understand, and to newcomers very friendly when it comes to these kind of games in general. It gives you a lot of information about basically everything whenever you want or need. Be that attack of the enemies, what card effects do, buffs and debuffs do, what certain icons mean, and so on. And just like the story, there is this certain charm present here, but it worked a lot better in my opinion, and I enjoyed it therefore a lot more. Each encounter felt so lively with animations of Yohane playing cards. Higher rarity cards were even little spectacles when you play them. Enemies, locations and bosses all had decent to good character. And even though Yohane is still a little bit over the top in her behavior, it did not get in the way of enjoying the gameplay. In fact, I say it strengthened it. What did get in the way was the lack of motivation to play through more adventures after you completed the story. The story, while not being great or in-depth, does an important trick here. It pushes you to play the game, to go on these adventures again and again. Or at least that was for me the biggest driving force. And once the story ended, which takes roughly 5 to 6 hours, there was not a lot of motivation/reason left to play. Yes, the gameplay loop works great and can be fun, but if it wasn't for my own interest pushing to explore the little bits of possibilities I hadn't seen yet, I would have stopped playing right after the story ended. This is mainly because the game fails to feel rewarding for doing and completing adventures and having not really any endgame. It offers challenges which rewards you with points, new unlocks in terms of cards, charms, some temporary boosting of your next adventure, and even costumes, which slightly change the starting deck and stats of every adventure. But that is about it. You don't gain points by just completing the adventure, making it feel like completing an adventure a bit of a waste when you didn't beat a challenge to earn points. And the things you unlock with these points don't have huge impact on your experience either. The game does not offer a class system that can spice up your playthrough or change how you approach and play your deck very noticeably. The costumes try to do something to spice things up, which is a decent attempt, by changing 1 or 2 cards of your starting deck and give you a different charm at the start. But that is very minimal and its effect is overall almost neglectable. Same goes with the 2 playing styles the game offers, who have balance and power. One is described as the middle of the road of the deck building aspect, where power is described as combo and attack focus. Both playstyles have their differences, but to me they still felt very similar to one another, maybe a little bit too much even at times. While they do have their own loot pool in terms of cards, it does not divvy up the playstyle so much, and it feels more of an indication of how relaxing you want to play through your adventure than anything else. The balanced playstyle does offer what it describes. It offers a balance in effect and cost when it comes to cards. Most cards you find are useful in one way or another and require no build-up to be effective, while power is the direct opposite of this. When playing with the power playstyle, you need to use more foresight when building your deck and play more focused on which cards you play when and where to get the most out of them, which is a little bit more stressful, so to say, and requires more focus than the balanced playstyle. Personally, I like the power playstyle more than the balanced one, as some of its cards had some fun effects that exploited the roguelite element greatly. Like it has cards that permanently gain attack or defense with every encounter you play them with. And if you have the RNG gods on your side and you get them early on, it means you can create strong cards for the final stages as you play, making me change paths to get more often in combat and even stall combat encounters just so that I could play these cards to strengthen them. But overall, even those cards still made the gameplay feel very safe, and I still was missing something that would spice up the things I was doing in this game. There was no gimmick deck to start off with or challenge modes that would put this gameplay system upside down or show its strengths in different ways. It stays very close to its foundation ideas, and don't get me wrong, the foundation ideas that this roguelite deck builder has are very solid, fun, and work great. But it lacks a rewarding feeling and stays maybe a bit too close at its foundation. In the end, Yohane the Parhelion Numazu in the Mirage is a fun little roguelite deck builder. One with a certain anime charm to it that is very selective and potentially will make or break the game for you, as you do need to like, to a certain degree, these over-the-top acting anime girls. Story-wise, the game does have a decent message, but leaves a lot to be desired to. And while I think it's a shame that they wasted a good story opportunity, the pain was softened a lot by this game's great gameplay. It's by far the strongest aspect of this game, and I had a lot of fun playing through many adventures, creating my decks, and the satisfying feeling when you compiled and perfected your deck. Seeing it bulldoze everything in its path was just great. However, despite the game having a very good foundation, it does stick very close to it and seems to not take any risks with it whatsoever. Which to a degree is fine, because what it does very well, and having a fun little roguelite deck builder like this with me on my Switch wherever I go is definitely a plus in my book. But it still leaves a lot to desire to once the story ended and you're left with just the husk of that foundation. However, if that is precisely what you're looking for, a fun little roguelike deck builder that you can take with you on the go, then I would highly recommend checking this game out. Just forget the story, it's all about the gameplay, and on that end it's fine, but it's also nothing special.